White Lotus Day commemoration, celebrating, of course, the work and the life of H.P. Blavatsky. It's a real privilege to be with you all today. I know that we're gathering from all over the world. We have many continents represented in our attendance and our signups. And in our program today, we have people that are participating from all over the world. So it's truly international in another respect as well, in that we're going to be hearing 7 different languages in addition to English. Our program today is something we're doing all together. We've had on the 8th, earlier in the week, White Lotus Day, perhaps in our local lodges and our local groups, which is a wonderful thing to do. We wanted to add to that an opportunity to celebrate HPB's life together. And hopefully that idea of a nucleus of universal brotherhood is in the back of our minds as we gather together today. To start our program, we are going to hear a chanting of the Gayatri Mantra by Roshni from the Bangalore Lodge.
Om Bhurbhuvah Suvah Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yonaha Prachodayat. Om Bhurbhuvah Suvah Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yonaha Prachodayat. Om Bhurbhuvah Suvah Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yonaha Prachodayat. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
We will now hear a tribute to HBB from Mr. Judge by Monica.
It was her eye that attracted me, the eye of one whom I must have known in lives long passed away. She looked at me in recognition at that first hour, and never since has that look changed. Not as a questioner of philosophies did I come before her, not as one groping the dark for lights that schools and fanciful theories obscured, but as one who, wandering many periods through the corridors of life, was seeking the friends who could show where the designs for the work had been hidden. And, true to the call, she responded, revealing the plans once again and speaking no words to explain, simply pointed them out and went on with the task. It was as if but the evening before we had parted, leaving yet to be done some detail of a task taken up with one common end. It was teacher and pupil, elder brother and younger, both bent on the one single end, but she with the power and knowledge that belong but to lions and sages. Thank you.
And now we'll hear a few biographical notes from Brother Gene.
Thank you, Jerry. We'd like to extend our greetings to our friends of Theosophy around the world. As perhaps most know, HPB requested in her will that on the anniversary of her day of transition, that friends would gather and spend some time reading from the books that she loved, The Light of Asia and The Voice of the Silence. We should remember that she didn't ask us to remember her. And that's because she very well knew the difference between personality and individuality. And by no means did she want to be worshiped. The day has come to be called White Lotus Day, as some of her bibliographies express, because on the first anniversary year of her passing, Olcott, who was a co-founder of Theosophical Society, recognized that there was a great abundance of lotuses surrounding the area. And so he decided at that time to call it White Lotus Day. In time, as the process of this remembrance continued, folks kind of added things onto it. And so now, as in today, we have a remembrance of a great teacher with not only devotional readings from the text that she requested, but others, as well as some remembrances of her. For myself, when I think of HPB, I don't think of her as a who. I think more particularly of her as a what. What kind of spiritual power was it that used the body and personality that we called HPB? If we are to believe our teachings, and for instance, the article Genius that she wrote, it's never the personality that is revered. It's the spiritual ego, that true individuality that has been in existence throughout years and who has come, as she did, to perform a task for the benefit of humanity. If we look at the birth of her body, it was born August 8th, 1931, and that was a time, we believe, in Russia where, again, as we had found out, come to find out, that the Russian Asiatic cholera was abundant. Similar to COVID that we've just gone through and continue to go through the dregs of, a lot of people died. And so her biography speaks to the fact that she was born amongst hundreds of coffins, a soul taking life in the midst of distress. Her biography also indicates that she herself, when that body was born, was sickly, was weak, and her mother, not really believing that she was going to live long, sought to have her baptized as soon as possible. Needless to say, in the midst of the baptism, all of the dramas that occurred, including a huge fire, set the groundwork for many bad omens surrounding her life, as well as good omens. And she delivered on both promises. As she grew up through those young years, before the age of 11, she had to endure the experience of the death of her younger sister, as well as witnessing the death of her mother at the age of 11. And it was about that time that she transitioned under the auspices, so to speak, of her father, who was serving, we believe, in the military in different places around Russia. She was placed with her sister in the custody of her maternal grandmother. And the story goes that it was at that time that she had one of the first uplifts of her life. Grandmother's father had given her a library. And it was that library that HPB says that she enjoyed so much of her time because it was filled with books on occultism, Western magic, on the Kabbalistic or secret teachings, on alchemy, all of those things that she just relished. And obviously, she devoured those with great glee. Another point of her early life, which was evident throughout the entire life, was that they found out that she was not quite the ordinary child. She was, in fact, fairly sensitive, perceived as psychic, had psychokinetic abilities, and even loved to joke with those around her in regards to playing with those. She also played with those little invisible beings that we have come to call the elementals or the nature spirits. And additionally, it's been said that she always saw the face of her master, whom she would meet in person at a later time in her life. Her life can be broadly broken up into 3 periods. The first ending when she was around 17 or 18 years old, when she, on a dare, decided to marry Mr. Blavatsky, and yet chose not to consummate that marriage. And so when she felt that things were moving into a position to force her to remain with him, she decided to politely take off. And so that ended the first 17, 18 years of her life in Russia and set her on the journey of her life. And during those next 23 years, with a period of 1 or 2 returns to Russia to see her family, she set out exploring the world. During that time, obviously, she was meeting very interesting people. As she says, she met up with individuals from the Egyptian occult brotherhood. Obviously, she met with those from the Indian occult brotherhood and mentioned that brotherhood in Syria at the time that was related to the occult tradition. She also experienced a period of pretty deep depression, wherein she wanted to commit suicide. And it was at that time that her master appeared to her once again and said, "Not time, we've got some work to do." And so she continued her journeys, ended up spending about 2 years in India/Tibet with her teacher during a period of more intense initiation. And then that period of her life ending roughly around 1873, she then embarked in 1874 onto that third and last period of her life. She set out to New York, and in arriving in New York, she met 2 key figures, Olcott and Judge. And it was during that time in 75 that the Theosophical Society was born. From that time on, in short version, she worked for Theosophy to awaken the Buddhimanas of the race. She sacrificed just about everything she had to accomplish that task. She remained devoted to her teacher, and as some of her students say, she left this body May 8th, 1891, at her post, at her writing desk, sitting in her favorite writing chair, surrounded by friends and disciples. Thank you.
We will now hear a passage from the Light of Asia by Tom.
From the Light of Asia, Book the First. The Scripture of the Savior of the World, Lord Buddha, Prince Siddhartha, styled on earth, in earth and heavens and hells, incomparable, all honored, wisest, best, most pitiful, the teacher of nirvana and the law. Thus came he to be born again for men, below the highest sphere of four regents. Four regents sit who rule our world, and under them are zones, nearer but high, where saintliest spirits dead wait thrice 10,000 years, then live again. And on Lord Buddha, waiting in that sky, came for our sakes the five sure signs of birth, so that the devas knew the signs and said, Buddha will go again to help the world. Yea, spake he, now I go to help the world this last of many times, for birth and death end hence for me and those who learn my law. I will go down among the Sakyas under the southward snows of Himalaya, where pious people live and a just king. That night, the wife of King Suddhodana, Maya the queen, asleep beside her lord, dreamed a strange dream. Dreamed that a star from heaven, splendid, six-rayed, in color rosy pearl, whereof the token was an elephant, six-tusked, and whiter than Vahuka's milk, shot through the void, and shining into her, entered her womb upon the right. Awaked, bliss beyond mortal mothers filled her breast, and over half the earth a lovely light forewent the morn. The strong hills shook, the waves sank lulled. All flowers that blow by day came forth as 'twere high noon. Down to the farthest hells passed the queen's joy, and when warm sunshine thrills wood glooms to gold, and into all the deeps a tender whisper pierced. O ye, it said, the dead that are to live, the live who die, uprise and hear and hope. Buddha is come, whereat in limbo's numberless much peace spread, and the world's heart throbbed, and a wind blew with unknown freshness over lands and seas. And when the morning dawned and this was told, the gray dream readers said, the dream is good. the crab is in conjunction with the sun. The queen shall bear a boy, a holy child of wondrous wisdom, profiting all flesh, who shall deliver men from ignorance, or rule the world, if he will deign to rule. In this wise was the holy Buddha born. Thank you.
And now we'll hear a selection from The Voice of the Silence by Hal.
Alas, alas, that all men should possess Alaya, be one with the great soul, and that possessing it, Alaya should so little avail them. For mind is like a mirror. It gathers dust while it reflects. It needs the gentle breezes of soul wisdom to brush away the dust of our illusions. Seek, O beginner, to blend thy mind and soul. Shun ignorance, and likewise shun illusion. Avert thy face from world deceptions. Mistrust thy senses. They are false. But within thy body, the shrine of thy sensations, seek in the impersonal for the eternal man. And having sought him out, look inward. Thou art Buddha. Shun praise, O devotee. Praise leads to self-delusion. Thy body is not self. Thy self is in itself without a body, and either praise or blame affects it not. The lamp burns bright when wick and oil are clean. To make them clean, a cleaner is required. The flame feels not the process of the cleaning. The branches of a tree are shaken by the wind. The trunk remains unmoved. Both action and inaction may find room in thee. Thy body agitated, thy mind tranquil, thy soul as limpid as a mountain lake. So kindly acts, and thou shalt reap their fruition. Inaction in a deed of mercy becomes an action in a deadly sin. Fix thy soul's gaze upon the star whose ray thou art, the flaming star that shines within the lightless depths of ever being, the boundless fields of the unknown. Have perseverance as one who doth forevermore endure. Thy shadows live and vanish. That which in thee shall live forever, that which in thee knows, for it is knowledge, is not of fleeting life. It is the man that was, that is, and will be, for whom the hour shall never strike. Step out from sunlight into shade to make more room for others. To live to benefit mankind is the first step. To practice the 6 glorious virtues is the second. Follow the wheel of life. Follow the wheel of duty to race and kin, to friend and foe, and clothe thy mind to pleasures as to pain. Exhaust the law of karmic retribution. Gain cities for thy future birth. Give light and comfort to the toiling pilgrim, and seek out him who knows still less than thou, who in his wretched desolation sits starving for the bread of wisdom and the bread which feeds the shadow, without a teacher, hope, or consolation, and let him hear the law. Thank you.
We will now hear a selection from the Bhagavad Gita. We're going to hear it in 2 languages, first in English and then again in Swedish.
My devotee, who is free from enmity, well disposed towards all creatures, merciful, whole exempt from pride and selfishness, the same in pain and pleasure, patient of wrongs, contented, constantly devout, self-governed, firm in resolves, and whose mind and heart are fixed on me alone, is dear unto me. He also is my beloved, of whom mankind is not afraid, and who has no fear of man, who is free from joy, from despondency, and the dread of harm. My devotee, who is unexpecting, pure, just, impartial, devoid of fear, and who hath forsaken interest in the results of action, is dear unto me. He also is worthy of my love, who neither rejoiceth nor findeth fault, who neither lamenteth nor coveteth, and being my servant hath forsaken interest in both good and evil results. He also is my beloved servant, who is equal-minded to friend or foe, the same in honor and dishonor, in cold and heat, in pain and pleasure, and is unsolicitous about the event of things, to whom praise and blame are as one, who is of little speech, content with whatever cometh to pass, who hath no fixed habitation, and whose heart, full of devotion, is firmly fixed. But those who seek this sacred ambrosia, the religion of immortality, even as I have explained it, full of faith, intent on me above all others, and united to devotion, are my most beloved. In Swedish, this passage goes thus. Min hängivne, som är fri från fiendskap, vänligt inställd till alla varelser, barmhärtig, fullständigt blottad på högmod och själviskhet, densamme i smärta och glädje, tålmodig, oförrätter, nöjd, ständigt gudfruktig, självbehärskad, fast i beslut och med sinne och hjärta riktade mot mig alena, är mig kär. Han är också min älskade för vilken människosläktet inte räds och som inte räds för någon människa, som är fri från glädje, modfullhet och fruktan för skada. Min hängivne, som ingenting förväntar sig, som är ren, rättvis, opartisk, fri från rädsla och som har övergett allt intresse för handlingens frukter, han är kär för mig. Switch, please. Den är också värdig min kärlek, som varken gläder sig eller finner fel, som varken klagar eller åtrår, och som min tjänare har avstått från varje tanke på både onda och goda resultat. Han är också min älskade tjänare som uppträdde lika mot vän och fiende, i ära och vanära, köld och hetta, smärta och glädje, och som är obekymrad om händelsernas utgång. Den för vilken pris och klander är detsamma som är tystlåten, tillfreds med vad som händer, som inte har någon fast bostad och vars hjärta är fyllt av hängivelse och väl befäst. Men de som söker denna heliga ambrosia, odödlighetens religion, just så som jag har beskrivit den, fulla av tro, inriktade på mig över alla andra och förbundna med hängivelse, är mina mest älskade. Thank you.
Concerning the
now-
writing,
We'll hear a passage now from the Secret Doctrine, both in first in English and then in Russian. Thank you, Angela.
concerning the writing of the secret doctrine. To accomplish the proposed task, the writer had to resort to the rather unusual means of dividing each volume or book into 3 parts, the first of which only is the consecutive, though very fragmentary, history of the cosmogony and the evolution of man on this globe. But these 2 volumes had to serve as a prologue and prepare the reader's mind for those which shall now follow. In treating of cosmogony and then of the anthropogenesis of mankind, it was necessary to show that no religion since the very earliest has ever been entirely based on fiction, as none was the object of special revelation. And then it is dogma alone which has ever been killing primeval truths. Finally, that no human-born doctrine, no creed, however sanctified by custom and antiquity, can compare in sacredness with the religion of nature. The key of wisdom that unlocks the massive gates leading to the arcana of the innermost sanctuaries can be found hidden in her bosom only, and that bosom is in the countries pointed to by the great seer of the past century, Emanuel Swedenborg. There lies the heart of nature, that shrine whence issued the early races of primeval humanity, and which is the cradle of physical man. This passage now in Russian. Для выполнения поставленной задачи писателю пришлось прибегнуть к довольно необычному способу разделения каждого тома или книги на 3 части. Только первая из них представляет собой последовательную, хотя и очень фрагментарную историю космогонии и эволюции человека на этом земном шаре. Но эти 2 тома должны были послужить прологом и подготовить разум читателя к тем, что последует дальше. При рассмотрении космогонии и затем антропогенеза человечества необходимо было показать, что ни одна религия, начиная с самой ранней, никогда не была полностью основана на вымысле, как ни одна не была объектом особого откровения. И что только догма всегда убивала первобытную истину. Наконец, ни одно учение, рожденное человеком, ни одно вероучение, как бы оно ни было освящено обычаями и древностью, не может сравниться по святости с религией природы. Ключ мудрости, отпирающий массивные врата, ведущие к тайнам откровенных святилищ, можно найти спрятанным только в ее лоне. И эта лона находится в странах, на которые указал великий провидец прошлого века Эммануэл Сведенборг. Там находится сердце природы, это святыня, из которой произошли ранние расы первобытного человечества и которая является колыбелью физического человека. Thank you.
Jean will offer some observations about these readings we've just heard.
Hey, thank you, Jerry. Clearly, these works and words that we've heard most likely embody the very essence of HPB herself. So we decided to look for her in those writings. And so in looking, we gather the following thoughts about the real HPB, if we can make such assumptions. She is a teacher that was simply born amongst humanity to show us the way to awaken from ignorance, Maya, and our illusionary obsession with the gunas. She was a teacher not pointing to nirvana, but instead she pointed to the reality of a universal brotherhood and the laws, the same laws that our first reading reflected, of karma and reincarnation inherent in the very fabric of life. She is a teacher that sought to show the students the reality of their own inner alaya, their immortality, such that birth and death would not exist for them in the truer sense of the word. And when realizing that, they could then begin to work ceaselessly for the world as its humanity. She tried to show us the 6 principles of our nature that are forever contained in the one supreme principle of our being, and the ability to raise the living, as the reading said, with a twist, from the darkness of death into the light of spiritual awakening. Knowing such, having touched that perhaps in some degrees herself, she was self-governed and devoted to the work chosen in order to help the world. She was an example of one who lived in the impersonal aspect of her being. She shunned both praise and cared nothing for blame. She acted constantly for the cleansing and the awakening of the mind of humanity, to clear the mirror of its dust. She continued to teach throughout her life her students, through the work, to live to benefit humanity, not themselves, to practice inwardly and outwardly the 6 glorious virtues, to help both friend and foe, and to constantly seek to exhaust their own personal karmic retribution, such that they might become universal forces for good. In reviewing her life, we know that she was exempt from pride, selfishness. She was the same in pain and pleasure, for as her teachers said, she suffered several mortal diseases. She was diseased, as they put it, in her body, in her brain, in her liver, in her kidneys, and yet she chose to continue to live through that body to help the work that her master had designated needed to be done in the world for humanity. She wanted to keep alive that spiritual impulse for all sentient life. She was always equal-minded in honor and dishonor, fixing her heart with devotion to her teacher and the work. She never doubted of her own inner spiritual ego, and those students that worked closely with her often got a glimpse of that. She ever worked to show, similar to Iamblichus, the one rootless root of all primeval truth, which sustains and pervades the one ultimate science of life, Theosophy. the key to the experiential awakening to eternal truth. When we review those readings, this is what we arrive at in regards to the inner life of an HPB. Thank you.
Thank you, Gene. We're going to turn our attention to the 7 paramitas of the voice of the silence. And in service of that aim, we're going to listen to several people read the 7 paramitas in their native tongue. To start with, we have the blessing of a student from Kazakhstan that's going to read it in her native language. I had to educate myself as to where Kazakhstan happened to be. So I thought maybe I'm not alone. So I thought I'd throw in a map so you could see where Gildes's roots are from. And now we'll hear from her the 7 paramitas in English and in her native tongue.
7 paramitas. 7 jeti paramitalar. Dana, the key of charity and love immortal. Dana, kayrımdуулуктун жана өлбөс сүйүүнүн ачкычы. Sila, the key of harmony in word and act, the key that counterbalances the cause and the effect, and then leaves no further room for karmic action. Sila, сөз менен иш аракеттеги гармониянын ачкычы, себеп менен натыйжаны тең салмактаган ачкыч жана кармалык иш аракет үчүн мындан ары орун калтырбайт. Santi, patient, sweet, that note can ruffle. Santi, чыдамкайлык таттуу, аны эч нерсе бузбайт. Viraga, indifference to pleasure and to pain, illusion conquered, truth alone perceived. Viraga, рахатка жана ооруга кайдыгерлик, иллюзия жеңип, чындыкты гана кабыл алды. Viraga, the dauntless energy that fights its way to supernal truth out of the mire of lies terrestrial. Virya, жер бетинде калптын баткагынан жогорку чындыкка карай күрөшкөн тайманбас энергия. Diana, whose golden gate once open leads to the disciple towards the realm of Sat eternal and its ceaseless contemplation. Алтын дарбазасы ачылган Диана шакирти түбөлүктүү Сат чөйрөсүн жана анын тынымсыз ой жүгүртүүсүнөн алып барат. Prajna, the key to which makes of a man a god, creating him a bodhisattva, son of the Dhyanis. Prajna, анын ачкычы адамды кудай кылып, аны Dhyanis уулу bodhisattva кылып жаратат. Such to the portals are the key golden keys. Порталдардын алтын ачкычтары ушундай. Thank you.
That was beautiful. And now we're going to hear the 7 paramitas in Spanish with the help of Roberto.
Cada portal tiene una llave dorada que abre su puerta y estas llaves son Dana, la llave de caridad y de amor inmortal. Shila, la llave de armonía en la palabra y en la acción. La llave que contrabalancea la causa y el efecto sin dejar ningún espacio a la acción kármica. Shanti, la paciencia tierna que nada puede alterar. Viraga, indiferencia al placer y al dolor, conquistada la ilusión, es percibida solo la verdad. Virya, la energía indómita que abre su brecha hacia la verdad suprema, desde el fango de las mentiras terrenales. Dhyana, cuya puerta de oro, una vez abierta, conduce al Narhol hacia el reino del eterno Sat y a su contemplación incesante. Prajna, la llave que hace del ser humano un Dios, convirtiéndolo en un bodhisattva, hijo de los Deyanis. Tales son las llaves de oro de los 7 portales. Gracias.
Wonderful. We're now going to listen to some elaboration on the 7 paramitas by Rita and Thea. They will read the paramitas both in English and Dutch.
The paramitas, the transcendental virtues that help us to reach the other shore. Each paramita contains the other 6. We have to apply them in our daily lives at the level where we stand. But to reach a transcendent insight, that's something else. How many times will we have to reopen these gates, always on a deeper level? The dream of being able to do so is not enough. We need to pack our bags and set off on our journey. The voice of the silence says, each portal had a golden key that opened its gate.
Dana, the key of charity and love immortal. Dana, de sleutel van menslievendheid en onsterfelijke liefde. Dana is the first of the transcendental virtues. It's also described as charity, generosity, or loving kindness. An important thing is that we do not expect a service in return. Expecting something in return, even gratitude, is not what is meant. Don't perform actions for the sake of its fruit, should be the underlying thought. For example, when we donate this warm coat to a needing person, we leave it to him or her to say thanks or not, to use it or not, or even sell it or not. These things should not annoy us. We should not be attached to the outcome of our gesture.
Sheila, the key of harmony in word and act. The key that counterbalances the cause and the effect and leaves no further room for karmic action. Sheila, de sleutel van harmonie in woord en daad. De sleutel die het tegenwicht vormt voor oorzaak en gevolg en geen verdere ruimte laat voor karmische werking. Sheila is about harmony in what I say and what I do in practice. Sheila is ethical discipline. We can talk a lot, chat about how we should and want to live. We can give 1,000 lectures on theosophical ethics. But how I behave every day, what I do or don't do, even what I think, that is what matters. Karma is the law that restores harmony. Karma is the reason we are born over and over again. The more I convert theory into practice, the more balanced my karma.
Shanti, patient sweet that naught can ruffle. Shanti, zoet geduld dat door niets verstoord kan worden. To be able to wait for something without getting frustrated is a valuable character trait. Also, that we don't immediately freak out when someone knocks on the door at a time when we are focused on something interesting that we actually think is more important. To lay down our activity in such a moment, to pay attention to the needs of a fellow man, is overcoming our lower nature. Patience is a high virtue. That's a proverb, a short statement that expresses the culturally accepted truth of being able to be patient.
Viraga, indifference to pleasure and to pain, illusion conquered, truth alone perceived. Viraga, onverschilligheid voor genoegens en voor pijn, illusie overwonnen en alleen waarheid voor ogen. Viraga is the fourth and middle paramita, a pivotal moment, also called dispassion. Can we be insensitive to sorrow and pain? We need to let things go, instead of clinging to positive or negative moments, because those too will pass. Not being thrown off balance by everything that happens to us. No sky-high cheering, no deep sad wailing. Sometimes very sad and painful things may happen, like a beloved leaving this world. Of course, we must grieve, but later try to assimilate this pain and let go, not letting the sadness define the rest of our lives. Equanimity as a basis, which is not insensitivity.
Vidya, the dauntless energy that fights its way to the supernal truth, out of the mire of lies celestial. Vidya, de onverschrokken energie die zich een weg bevecht naar de opperste waarheid, opstijgend uit het slijk van aardse leugens. Vidya can be considered as the exercise of the transcendental capacity of vigor, zeal, commitment, willpower, and effort. Vidya can be thought of as the mentality of one who has his goal clearly in mind. He persists until he reaches that goal despite of all the setbacks and disillusions he encounters on his path. On a world level, it reminds me of Nelson Mandela, who spent 27 years in prison, left with his back straight. And although he faced tough circumstances designed to break his resolve, Mandela refused to give up his efforts to achieve equality for all people. Besides, he was able to forgive his former opponents and emerged as a great statesman and leader.
Dhyana, whose golden gate, once opened, leads the Narjal towards the realm of Sat Eternal and its ceaseless contemplation. Dhyana, waarvan de gouden poort eenmaal geopend, de Narjal leidt naar het rijk van eeuwigdurend Sat en zijn onophoudelijke contemplatie. Let us start by giving full attention to everything we do, full concentration on our pursuits. Then we can learn to meditate, develop one-pointedness to deepen our knowledge. We have to work towards an absolute inner conviction that this is the true path to wisdom. It is hard to concentrate in this fragmented world full of noise. Sometimes we cannot help but endure those stimuli. But it is good to seek silence whenever we can, if one day we want to hear our inner voice.
Prajna, the key to which makes of a man a god, creating him a bodhisattva, son of the Dhyanis. Prajna, de sleutel die van een mens een god maakt en verheft tot bodhisattva, zoon der Dhyanis.
Prajna includes the other six. The paramitas are like a building, and prajna is the keystone. Not believing, but knowing. An inner knowledge without any doubt. The total emancipation of consciousness through insight, the full development of intuition.
For prajna, it seems impossible to give an example from our own life. But we found one in the life of Milarepa, one of Buddhism's greatest saints. This life is a lesson in trust, patience, and perseverance. Despite the karmic burden of a murder, he still achieved enlightenment and became a teacher to many. It's a story of vice and virtue. It shows that if we persevere and keep faith, how, even in the most hopeless situations, even a sinful man can become enlightened in the same life by working hard and facing adversity with equanimity. Milarepa teaches us that it's not so much what happens to us, it's how we respond to it. A conclusion for daily life could be that the idea is at least to strive within the first paramita to develop and practice all the others on dana level. Thank you.
We'll now hear some words from Robert Crosby, offered to us by Pierre.
This is Crosby relating how we should respond to the work that we're doing. And he says, mere attendance at meetings is not enough to make us feel our identity with the work. Attendance is but the preliminary to a further step. This shows itself when those who attend begin to ask how they may obtain further understanding. As they participate, they develop, of course, but they must not be allowed to forget the object of the help afforded them, nor that such help is but a means and a way. The object of theosophical study and work is not individual development, but that each and all should become true helpers of humanity. Some will catch the feeling. The tendency to say more than is useful to the newcomers is a common one in the beginning, but is gradually overcome when it is seen to minimize inquiry. We should push nothing while responding to everything. We would not use force if we could, because each mind has to be free to choose. Otherwise, there would be no true progress. And I think this is a good attitude to be taken in the matter of questions concerning theosophical claims and exponents. These various stripes must have their place in the great economy of consciousness. They must have, or people would not be attracted by them, would not seize and hold on to them. Every person really waked up by such claims or exponents will touch us sooner or later, if we hold to the straight line. On this, Mr. Judge once wrote, by our not looking at their errors too closely, the master will be able to clear it all off and make it work well. Thank you.
And now we'll hear from the words of B.P. Wadia.
Thus, H.P. Blavatsky's system of thought, to quote her own words applied to spiritualism, gives us facts that we may investigate, not assertions that we must believe without proof, with a clarity and an emphasis which are unmistakable. She says in her Key to Theosophy, as all theosophists have to be judged by their deeds and not by what they write or say, so all theosophical books must be accepted on their merits and not according to any claim to authority which they may put forward. And the secret doctrine itself says it is above everything important to keep in mind that no theosophical book acquires the least additional value from pretended authority. Knowledge and not belief is what H.P. Blavatsky offered. If today the world of knowledge does not, to a greater extent, examine her teachings, it is because her many followers are denizens of the world of belief. Alas, even a great number, adopting the appellation of her system of thought, display crass ignorance of it. An impartial and critical study of her system of thought, not with a desire either to prove that she is right or to prove that she is wrong, but to find out what her teachings are. That is what is wanted. Do they solve the intricate problems which confront us? Do they illuminate our intelligence? Do they satisfy the yearnings of the human heart? Do they inspire us to a noble life struggle, to a greater altruism, to a grander selflessness? Above all, are they in harmony with the established facts of ancient science, proven laws of ancient ethics, profound truths of ancient philosophy? Do they illumine the obscure and make known that which is unknown today, but which has been fully known in the past? While performing such a miracle, do these teachings clearly convey through their innate and inherent nature that they have escaped the fault and the degeneration it brings of their teachers' ahankara, egotism, which incarnates in the teachings? Reister, the German thinker, once wrote, I have heard that some philosophers, in seeking for truth, to pay homage to her, have seen their own image in the water and adored it instead. Has Madame Blavatsky done this? These are the tests. Along such lines, the proof must be sought. Thank you.
And now we'll hand the ball over, pelota, for some summing up from Jean.
Thanks once again, Jerry. From what we've just heard and throughout the program, we put together a few ideas that we hope capture everything that everyone has heard. And we can start by saying that HPB and those that she represented, providing, for instance, the paramitas, are always seeking to wake us up. They're always seeking to liberate us from our own ignorance. They work constantly to help each walk through the portals. It's not enough to have the key. It's not enough to open the gate. There's got to be passage through. And those paramitas are the beginning. And she emphasizes throughout much of her work that for those who dare, for those who dare to walk through those portals, they are invited to experientially know what they might lead to on the other side, so to speak. And so if we review those wonderful paramitas that we've just heard clarified by our two students in a wonderful way, we can perhaps consider that if we get to the other side of that gate, that we might experience Dana as that pervasive, compassionate love and charity that arises from within the inexhaustible oneself when we become one with its nature. In regards to Sheila, when we pass that gate, the entire boundless ocean of harmony, balance, peace, and eternal patience that is the law itself of karma in endless operation can be applied clearly to all sentient life such that we have deepening understanding of the whys and the ways of all things in the world. Shanti, perhaps on the other side, shows a patience sweet once we recognize the timeless, boundless duration in which all things unfold and infold, as if in 1 second, yet that duration persisting with utter patience. In regards to viraga, indifference to pleasure and pain, since we, perhaps on the other side, have become the very source of all opposites, having been raised above opposites, yet at the same time embracing and living through them, we can ceaselessly serve, perhaps as HPB and her teachers, the world's needs. Regarding Virya, perhaps we get to know firsthand the source of the inexhaustible energy within and without ourselves that we call life. That energy which is never depleted, hence never tires. Regarding dhyana, perhaps, like HPB and her teachers, we can get to a point that we are able to teach and to ceaselessly contemplate the eternality of that one life in all of its manifestations throughout all of its times, as we try to bring all things into harmony. As the old Christian saying goes, let it be done on earth as it is in heaven. And lastly, prajna. Even though if we are lucky and cursed at the same time, we may become a bodhisattva, son of the dhyani. May we never stop identifying with the work. May we never stop serving humanity by manifesting in effort, actuality, and deeds amongst all humanity and sentient life, a real functional universal solidarity and brotherhood. We believe that this is what HPB was trying to do. And in summarizing her life in a few words, we can say perhaps her life was simply one of utter sacrifice, devotion, and service. Sacrifice of the fleeting personality that she used, with constant devotion to both her inner and outer teaching. While serving humanity, she continually tried to, as mentioned, awaken the Buddhimanas of the race until the dying breath of her body, sitting in her chair, surrounded by her friends, once again on May 8th. And so we'd like to close with a somewhat paraphrased passage by HPB. It's one of our favorites, and we were fortunate enough to come across it years ago on a trip in India and wrote down some of the lines. So it's not a perfect rendition, but hopefully it'll hit the point. She said, perfect Buddhas are simply perfect initiates. All these are men and not disembodied. Their character may be found only in the secret volumes of Nagarjuna, the founder of the Mahayana system, initiated by the Nagas or Mahatmas. The parent of all schools beyond the Himalayas, the oldest, is where live those sages that have learnt the truths of the sunyata, the emptiness and impermanence of every terrestrial evanescent thing, and the mysteries of prajna paramita. There and there alone reigns paranishpana, the absolutely perfect comprehension of being and non-being, the changeless true existence in spirit, even while the latter is seemingly still in the body. Every inhabitant thereof being a non-ego, because he has become the perfect ego. Their voidness is self-existent and perfect, if there were profane eyes to sense and perceive it, because it has become absolute. The unreal being transformed into conditionless reality, and the realities of this our world having vanished in their own nature into thin air. The absolute truth, Paramartha Satya, having conquered relative truth, Samvriti Satya. The inhabitants of the mysterious region are thus supposed to have reached the state called in mystic phraseology the Samvedana, the self-analyzing reflection, and Paramatma, or that absolute consciousness of the personality merged into the impersonal ego, which is above all, hence above illusion in every sense. Such is the abode of our teachers on earth, hidden from the gross eyes of humanity, yet ever working for that same thankless humanity, of which abode the spiritual ego. Excuse me. The spiritual ego. Can't get it. The spiritual ego of HPB was a messenger. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Thank you very much. The two musical pieces, here's the credits for those. If there's anyone who's attended our commemoration program today who's new to Theosophy, you can go to theosophyult.com or to universaltheosophy.com to learn more. At the theosophyult.com website, you'll be able to find a wide array of online and in-person activities going on all throughout the world. It's really quite remarkable how many groups and how many online classes are available to students now. and you can find out about them on these two websites. The Universal Theosophy website is a compendium of theosophical literature and the sacred literature of mankind. And the Theosophy ULT website is a good place to send people if you would like to introduce Theosophy to someone new who you think is interested in it and wants to learn more. There is an effort on this website to put the key ideas of Theosophy forward in the simplest and most straightforward way.